please.
Thank you, Chairman. That's now started.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'd be very grateful if those who aren't speaking could turn their microphones off, please. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of South Stephen Planning Committee. My name is Bob Adams, and I am chairman of the committee. We're still in very challenging times with COVID. And I've no doubt this meeting will be a challenging one as well. Do look forward to the fullest cooperation of both members and the public in ensuring that our deliberations proceed in an orderly and professional manner. Housekeeping matters. All devices not being used need to be either turned off or put on silent, please. Members of the committee and of the public may find it helpful to have their devices connected to the main electricity supply to avoid losing connectivity to this meeting. It would be helpful if landlines are situated so that if they do ring, they are muted, and if you have pets, that they are not able to access the room you are working in, and that other household distractions are kept to a minimum. May I remind everyone that members of the committee have control of their own microphones. Please remember to turn them on when you start speaking and turn them off when you finish. Naomi has control of Shelley has control of the technical side of this. So please may I ask any committee member and members of the public have their cameras turned on when they're speaking, and speakers will be advised when they have 30 seconds left and when their time is up. The chat function in Skype for Business is only for the use of planning committee members who want to indicate that they would like to speak. And I do ask members of the committee not to try and have a debate through the chat box, but please just enter speak please or something similar. Any members of the public or other members should not use the chat function. If they do, they will be asked once to stop, and if they continue to use it, regrettably, they will be removed from the meeting. Please be aware that for members, should you disconnect yourself, if you have inadvertently pressed any of the buttons on your device, there is IT support during the whole of the meeting, should it be needed. If a member or members do get disconnected for more than a few seconds, I refer members and the public to 16.2 of the published protocol adjournment of a meeting. May I remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded. We will now begin the meeting, and I will ask Naomi, please, to do a roll call of members and those people who have indicated they wish to speak. Thank you. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, first of all, I'll do a roll call of members. Councillor David Bellamy.
Present.
Councillor Harish Bisnath Singh.
Present.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
Present.
We have Councillor Ashley Baxter substituting for Councillor Phil Dilks.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Exton.
Present.
Councillor Rosemary Cavery Brown.
Present.
Councillor Penny Mills.
Present.
Councillor Charmaine Morgan. I don't think that we have Councillor Morgan in the call at the minute. Councillor Robert Reid.
Present.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Present.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
Present.
Councillor Judy Smith.
Present.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
Present.
So that's we have 12 members of the committee present, and I'll now go through the public speakers. We have Georgina McRae.
Present.
Thank you. Keith Hargraves. Keith, I've unmuted you. If you can hear, can you please indicate if you're present in the call? Okay. I can see Mr. Hargraves in the participants list, but I can't currently hear him. So before the application he's speaking on, we'll just try and get in contact with him. And then we have Sam Harrison.
Yeah, present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Can I welcome Councillor Baxter to this meeting of the Planning Committee? He is substituting for Councillor Dilks, who has some family business to attend to. So thank you, Councillor Baxter, for stepping in and making the full complement. The order of business for each item on the agenda, just for clarity, there'll be a short presentation by the case officer. All speakers then have 3 minutes to speak in the order of district councillor if requested, then of parish or town councillor, objectors, a supporter, and then the applicant or agent. After that, we will have questions lasting 10 minutes to the applicant and the case officer. We then go into vote, and we then go into debate, leading to a vote. So that is the order of procedures. So the next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest that are not recorded in the declaration book, please? I'll take silence to be a no then. Thank you for that. Just remind members that if it does occur to them they have an interest in any item on the agenda, they can declare that at any point during the meeting. Can we go on then to minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 16th of December? They have been circulated. Do you wish me to go through them page by page, or can I take them as read and ask for a proposer and a seconder that they be adopted, please?
I'm quite happy to propose, Mr. Chairman. Mike.
Thank you, Councillor Exton. Do I have a seconder, please?
I will second it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Harish. Naomi, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councillor David Bellamy.
Sorry, Naomi, can I say you respond for, against, or abstain, please?
Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Cabery Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
For.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith. Councillor Judy Smith.
Sorry. For.
Thank you. And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
So those minutes are approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. With members' permission, we're going to put items 4 and 5 together, as they both refer to the development at Rectory Farm. So we will discuss and debate them both together, but we'll be required to take a separate vote for each application. Members content with that? Fine. I'll take no indication again, so I'll take that as approved by committee. Phil Moore, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as the Chairman said, we're going to be, well, I'm going to be presenting these two applications together, S16-2816 and S16-2819. They both relate to the Rectory Farm development in the northwest quadrant of Grantham. So, good morning, everyone. My name's Phil Moore. I am Special Projects Manager at SKDC. I'm also the case officer for these two applications. Before I go any further, just a couple of late items. Following the publication of the additional items report, we've received an additional letter of representation from a local resident. Most of the issues that were brought up have already been discussed in the main report relating to design and layout, etc. One issue which hasn't been mentioned previously was a request for hedgehog friendly fencing. This is something that can be dealt with by condition. We have conditions requiring details of boundary treatment, so that's something we can look at when we come to discharging conditions. Also, I'm recommending amendments to 2 of the conditions in the report and an additional condition. These relate to biodiversity. They effectively strengthen the permission and the requirements for biodiversity enhancements, and also a new condition requiring full details of the vehicular and cycleway connections to Poplar Farm and later stages of Rectory Farm. That's a belt and braces exercise to ensure that those connections are of the right standard and delivered in a timely fashion. And I will put those conditions on at the end of the presentation. So if you bear with me a second, I will share my presentation with you. Somebody can let me know when it appears on the screen, please. Right, it should be coming up any second now.
There you go, Phil. Don't look so worried.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, so the key issues with these applications are the principle of development, highways and traffic, the design and the general impacts on the character of the area, and finally residential amenity, and I will also add to that the general amenity and environmental impacts on the area. So this slide shows the combined 2 applications in red, in the red outline, in its wider context of the northwest quadrant. Now the northwest quadrant is allocated in the local plan, and if you can see my cursor, this section here is what we refer to as Poplar Farm, which has already got permission, is partially built out. The other sections here are later phases of Rectory Farm, and this one down here is a site which already has planning permission and which is under construction. This slide again shows it in the wider context. This time I've shown this Poplar Farm School, which has already been built, and the site where the northwest quadrant local centre would be. And the idea of this slide is just to show you the relationship between Rectory Farm and the kind of centre of the northwest quadrant. This aerial photograph also shows those parts of Poplar Farm which are currently under construction. This slide I think is useful because it shows the site in relation to the topography of Grantham. As you can see, Grantham in the middle here, the centre of Grantham is in what we might refer to as the Grantham Bowl, a low-lying area, surrounded by hills, often known as the Green Rim. Rectory Farm is on the higher ground, on the sort of top of the plateau, rather than the steeply sloping Green Rim. This slide shows the combined site layout. I'll just give you a brief description. So essentially we have 3 tree-lined avenues going north to south or south to north throughout the site, which will eventually link on to further stages of Rectory Farm. We also have east-west connections, this one here, a through road which connects this side to Poplar Farm and this side to future development areas of Rectory Farm. Barrowby Road, we've got dwellings facing the road, strong frontages, trees along the street. In the middle here we have a central linear area of open space, which is a continuation of the existing linear park within Poplar Farm. So the whole of the northwest quadrant will have this linear park running through it. just here, this land is allocated for an extension to the Poplar Farm School play area. And then you have another open space up here. And right in the middle, you've got a children's play area serving the whole of this part of phase 1. And throughout the open space, you've got a number of suds drainage ponds, including this one here, which is an existing pond, which is to be retained and enhanced as part of the development. And then this slide just shows the Jelson half of the proposal. And this one is the Linden half. I'm happy to go back to those if anybody's got any questions. So now these slides show some montages which the developers have provided for us to show the sort of general character that will be created throughout the development. The top one you can see tree-lined streets with grass verges, materials predominantly red brick but with some render, some stone, roofs, red pan tiles and grey slate effect tiles. And this just shows some of the parts of the site that will be facing onto green areas. Again, lots of trees. Now onto some photographs. Now this is Barrowby Road looking west, right at the start of the site, just here. And the 3 roads that I talked about that will go through the site are accessed along Barrowby Road here. Now this is a bit further up Barrowby Road, looking the other direction, looking east. The site is on this side. This is just from the same site, just panned around a little bit, so you get a sense of the kind of gently undulating nature of the site, with development at Poplar Farm beyond, and then the land dips down quite dramatically into the centre of Grantham and then rises up again on the other side. You can see the ridge of hills on the other side, and you can just about see Poplar Farm, that green building just there, Poplar Farm School. Same site, panned around a little bit more. There's the school, pond which will be retained and enhanced, other bits of Poplar Farm, and then in the distance you've got the spire of St Sebastian's Church at Great Gunnerby. And that's from a similar location, zoomed in just to show the spire of St Wolfram's in relation to the site. This is at the far west end of the site where it meets Barrowby Road. The accesses, 3 accesses would be along this section of road. That's from essentially the same location but slightly to a few feet to the north. Again, you can see the sort of gently undulating nature of the site, intensively cultivated agricultural land as it is now. And that is from the far northwest corner of the site. Poplar Farm School there in the distance, the Poplar Farm development, and St Wolfram's Church just there, and the hills beyond. So these pictures just give you a flavour of the nature of the site. Now this one is where some members attended the site visit earlier in the week. This is the road which will run through the site from Poplar Farm. You have Poplar Farm School here. This road will continue east-west throughout the site. And then I won't spend too much time on these, but these are taken from that boundary. This is the pond that will be retained and enhanced as part of the drainage system. So in terms of our evaluation, firstly, the principle of development. Well, as you'll be aware, Grantham is the major focus of development in the local plan. This site is on the edge of Grantham, it's allocated, it's part of the northwest quadrant, and in terms of the principle of development, it does accord with all relevant policies of the local plan. And I put this one in. This comes from the local plan, and this illustrates the local plan's or the council's aspirations in the local plan for the growth of Grantham. Quite significant amount of growth is planned in Grantham. Rectory Farm is this area just here, and the two applications that we're considering are relatively small parts of Rectory Farm, although obviously still an important component in the overall growth of Grantham. In terms of design, these applications have gone through quite a lengthy process of redesign and a number of iterations. They've been around since 2016, which is quite a long time, but in that time they've gone through an open design review, open being a design review panel based in Leicester. They're now known as Design Midlands, and they made a number of recommendations about how the design could be improved, and that resulted in the council commissioning ACOM to do a draft planning brief, which would set out the master plan effectively for the whole of Rectory Farm. And these applications have been redesigned in line with the open recommendations and in line with the planning brief, and extensive consultations and advice with officers both from SKDC and LCC. We've assessed it against Building for a Healthy Life, which is a government endorsed method of assessing design, and it does perform well against that. It's very well connected to Poplar Farm and the town centre, with cycleways and vehicular connections as well. And overall, it's a higher quality design and accords with all the relevant policies. Just a couple of slides now relating to the planning brief, the master plan. This slide shows the sort of constraints and opportunities that this site offers, and as you can see, there's various viewpoints shown on here which development should incorporate to take advantage of the views across the town to St Wolframs, etc. There's also shows the opportunity here for an extension of the linear park. This slide shows the overall master plan. The drawing on the left comes from the brief. It's the overall master plan. Drawing on the right is the applications that you're considering today, the layout, and as you can see, it pretty well accords with the layout as shown on this master plan. The master plan is not rigid, so you know the roads can go a slightly different course, or you know there's flexibility in the exact width or extent of open space, etc. But it does, as you can see, it does accord with the general features of the master plan as set out here. Just to further illustrate how far the design has come, this is the original plans that were submitted. Lots of issues with this. The obvious one is the whole development will be served by a large roundabout, a very heavily engineered, highways dominated solution, which wasn't considered acceptable. That was dropped in favour of the three junctions from Viability Road, which we'll come on to in a minute. These layouts were very much dominated by cul-de-sacs and irregular building lines. There was, I won't go into great detail, but there was all kinds of issues that we weren't particularly happy with in terms of the design. So after a long period of working with the developers to improve the design, this is the slide I showed earlier on, which is the amended design, which is much improved. Finally, on to other impacts. In terms of the environmental, amenity or highway safety or traffic impacts, they're all acceptable. It's been rigorously assessed by LCC Highways and Highways England, and subject to mitigation, there are no issues there. Biodiversity, change from intensively cultivated agricultural land to a much greener, with site with a lot more trees and biodiversity will result in an overall net biodiversity gain, and that will be further strengthened by the conditions on the permission. SB1, the policy in our local plan which talks about sustainability, conditions will be attached to ensure that the development will comply with that policy and provide all appropriate measures to mitigate climate change and reduce carbon emissions, etc. Education, health, affordable housing and highway mitigation will be secured by 106. So overall it accords with all relevant policies and is recommended for approval subject to conditions under section 106. And before I finish, I'm just going to put up the amended conditions. So if you can let me know when that comes up.
Yeah, they're loading now, Phil. Yeah, I think they're up on the screen, up on my screen. Everybody else's screen, yes? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So I'm proposing or recommending an amendment to conditions 10 and 18. All it is adding in, as well as details of soft landscaping, the requirement for details of biodiversity enhancements, particularly bird and bat boxes and other enhancements, including those recommended in the environmental statement. So condition 10 requires the submission of details, condition 18 requires those details to be implemented. Additional conditions, firstly, a condition requiring the development to be carried out in accordance with the mitigation measures in the ecology chapter of the ES, and that's to protect obviously ecology and biodiversity during construction. And the final one is requiring details of the vehicle and footway links across the site boundaries together with a timetable for implementation, and this is to ensure that they are provided in a timely manner and to an appropriate standard. So that concludes my presentation, Chairman, and as I said, the recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions of 106 as set out in the report and as amended by these conditions that I've just put up on the screen. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. We have two speakers for both these applications. Speaking on both of them, we have Mr. Keith Hargraves, who wishes to speak against the application, and we then have Georgina McRae on behalf of the applicants. So, Mr. Hargraves, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mr. Hargraves. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and turn the video on as well. Okay.
Yes, you can, if you can. Can you turn it on?
Yes, I have. Yes, yeah. Just bear with me. There we go. Yes.
Yeah, we can now see and hear you, Mr. Hargreaves. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
But yeah, my objection really falls down to two things. One is the actual number of houses and therefore the resulting number of cars that will be created, especially the impact that will have on the Asda roundabout. I mean, with building 1,150 houses proposed on the site, using Department of Transport statistics for average number of cars per house, that would lead to an extra 1,529 cars, most of which would be obviously heading down towards Asda and also to the A1 junctions. And that's going to create, as your reports have seen, quite a considerable number of extra minutes on journeys and stuff, especially when you allow for additional traffic strain from Spitalfield. But also, it's the actual fact that the roundabout was removed and the replacement of the roundabout with 3 service roads, and the location of those service roads in particular that I object, in as much as one of them is directly opposite driveways, both mine and my neighbours, which is 267 and 269 Barrowby Road. And what this is going to actually create is a roundabout. Is a crossroads effect. In that, instead of where at this moment in time we have to look left and right, we're going to have to look straight ahead as well and give way to traffic. And cars coming from town will be inevitably needing to turn right to go back onto the estate opposite our house, which will make it very difficult for us to be able to get off our driveways and certainly to turn right to go into town. And I just think that a roundabout is a much better solution in as much as it gives a north-south straight route, as it was at the top of Gloucester Road, or at the junction of Gloucester Road, a straight route that would take traffic from Rectory Farm down to the only convenience store at Barrowby Gate and on through to Harlexton Road and everything else, which would help relieve some of the traffic flow down on Asda. But it is in particular the inconvenience, the lack of thought that's being put in as to the siting of those service roads, where you're putting two service roads opposite houses. And I would therefore ask, especially as Phil said the roads can be relocated, that consideration is given back to putting a roundabout in using 106 funding. And move the location of that road so it's in line with Gloucester Road.
Thank you for that, Keith. We now move to a presentation by Georgina McRae, please, on behalf of the applicants.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Georgina. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, members, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. Thanks also to Phil for your thorough presentation of our proposals and your commitment to the application over recent years. I'm Georgina McRae. I'm a planning manager at Linden Homes, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Linden and Jelson Homes. As you are all aware, there is a long history to this site, with pre-application discussions starting in 2013. The current applications, submitted almost exactly 4 years ago to the day, comprise detailed proposals covering a first phase of 448 new homes. As you can imagine, since the applications were submitted, there have been extensive discussions with key stakeholders, including an independent design review. The scheme has been developed to accommodate changes in policy and, in particular, an evolving transportation strategy for Barrowby Road. We have also worked closely with AECOM in their preparation of the Rectory Farm design brief, which these applications very much reflect. We are confident, based on the extensive period of engagement and thorough internal and external review, that the proposals before you today represent a high quality and sustainable extension to Grantham. As explained by our officers, the first phase of the development has been subject to a viability review due to the extensive upfront infrastructure costs involved to service the land, including the significant reinforcement of the off-site electricity network servicing this site and the remainder of the northwest quadrant allocations. The viability assessment has been independently tested and reviewed by consultants on behalf of the council. As a result of this, we have discussed and negotiated a package of Section 106 measures that result in us providing an extensive package of community benefits. This includes the provision of 10% affordable housing available to first-time buyers at 80% of open market value, whilst also meeting in full the contributions requested towards education at £2.6 million, healthcare £300,000, community facilities at £100,000 and £1.7 million towards off-site highways improvements to mitigate the impacts of this development. All in all, financial contributions from the first phases would total in the region of £5 million. In terms of sustainability, any permission will include a condition requiring the future approval of mitigation measures to ensure the scheme complies, as a minimum, with local and national planning policy in terms of energy efficiency. However, given upcoming changes in building regulations, the homes are likely to surpass this requirement in the current local plan. In summary, these first phase applications will release this long-standing allocation for much-needed delivery of housing, assisting South Kesteven in meeting its current target of 14,000 new homes by 2036. Your officer's report concludes the proposals have been designed to a high standard which is in keeping with its context and compliant with local and national planning policy. We therefore request you grant permission in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina. We now move on to questions to the applicant. Does any member have any questions to Georgina, please? There's no indication in the conversation or chat box, so I will assume not. Thank you for that presentation, Georgina. We now move on to questions to the case officer, and there's an indication that Councillor Exton would like to ask a question of Phil. Mike Exton, Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a very small point. It's on page 14 of the presentation by Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue 5.15. Request one fire hydrant to be provided on the site. Is that a mistake, a typo mistake, or is that the whole amount of fire hydrants going to have on the whole of this site? It's to me, as a former member of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, you know, it seems very small amount for a huge site like this.
Thank you, Mike. Phil, response?
I believe it's one fire hydrant on one of the application sites, and then I can't remember if it's one or two on the other one, but there's certainly more than one over that whole 448 dwelling development. I'd have to check the what it says in the report, but that's what Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue said is necessary to serve the development in terms of fire hydrants.
Page 48, second application, does indicate two times fire hydrants to be provided on site. So that is included on the second application.
Yeah, so that's 3 in total, and that's the correct amount.
Yeah, okay. So, but I'm a bit disappointed, you know, that very small amount for a big congestion of modern houses. Thank you, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mike. Can I move on to Councillor Milnes? Penny, please. Question to Phil.
Yes, good morning, Phil. I appreciate 1.7 million is going to go to the roads. What concerns me is I think I've read a condition, no occupation, before all those road amendments or improvements are made, the A1, A52 junction and the relief road. Can you let me know how this works in timing scales and what the implications of that are? And secondly, unless I can come back, bearing in mind that all this development is on top of the plateau, can you just confirm to me that we do keep the views of Belton House and the 2 church steeples within the development, and that we have quite a lot of landscaping around the edges? Sorry.
Thank you, Penny. Phil, response, please.
Okay, in terms of the roads, there's 2 kind of major highway mitigation strands there. The first one is Lincolnshire County Council require a substantial financial contribution which would go towards the Grantham Southern Relief Road. The development is only acceptable with the Grantham Southern Relief Road. If Grantham Southern Relief Road didn't exist or was not planned, this development would not be acceptable because it would put far too much traffic on Barrowby Road and through the town centre, etc. The other major piece of highway mitigation that's required to make this development acceptable is an upgrade to the A1 A52 junction on the the eastern arm of the junction, and that includes essentially putting in traffic lights, signalisation of that junction. And I sent round some drawings to members earlier on, but I'm happy to put that on the screen if required. That is being done in a slightly different way. It's not a requirement of the 106. It's a condition, what we call a Grantham condition, which is what Highways England have requested. In other words, development can't happen, or no occupation of any dwellings can happen on Rectory Farm until that signalisation of the eastern arm of the A1A52 junction has happened. That it will happen. It is mitigation that's required for a number of different developments around Grantham, and it's not certain at the moment which one of those developments will come forward first, and there are discussions carrying on outside of the planning process on how that mitigation will come about, but it will happen. And the other questions that you made, the views, yes, there are views incorporated into this phase 1 of Rectory Farm across Grantham, where you'll be able to see some Wolfram Spire, Belmont Tower, and also the spire of the church at Great Gunnerby. When it comes to later phases of Rectory Farm, there are much more opportunities for sort of wider vistas, because the land rises to the northwest, and that's shown in the planning brief. So where the views are incorporated into this phase 1 are in the places where it's shown on the planning brief where views can be achieved. In terms of landscaping, yeah, there's a comprehensive scheme of landscaping, the final details of which will be required by condition, and there'll be lots of trees along the streets and in the landscaped areas, and that will help the development to blend in with that edge of town context. Whether you're looking from within the site outwards or towards the site from elsewhere. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Phil. Can I move on to Councillor Bellamy? David, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Phil. And I think Penny's asked pretty much what I wanted to ask. But can I just confirm that because the points in 24 and 25 on the report, I don't know whether it's the wording of them that I can't understand correctly, but it's as if they all can be occupied, but no other further properties can be occupied after the 448. So what we're saying is none of the properties can be occupied until the upgrading of the junction on the east side of the A1A52.
Correct. None of the properties on within these applications, none of the 448 properties can be occupied excuse me, until that signalisation has happened, and the condition is flexible in that it doesn't tie it to a particular scheme. There are two schemes on the table at the moment. There's one scheme of signalisation that's been drawn up by the promoters of the designer outlet village, and they've got a similar Grantham condition on that permission. There is the scheme which Jelson and Linden have put together, which is very similar to the designer outlet village one, and Lincolnshire County Council are also working up their own scheme, which will involve a more comprehensive remodelling of that junction. It's in quite an early stage at the moment, but the condition is flexible enough that if that scheme comes along at the right time, then it allows for that scheme to happen as well, because that would provide the same degree of mitigation for this proposal.
Can I just come back on that, Mr. Chairman?
Very quickly.
Yeah. Phil, does that mean that in theory the other option could be built rather than the traffic lights, whereby the A52 traffic goes straight down onto the A1?
Yes, in theory, that's LCC's concept scheme. As I say, it's in quite early stages at the moment. They haven't worked it up to the very technical stage yet, but the condition does allow that to happen if LCC are able to put that scheme together in a timely manner.
Thank you. Like I said, the obvious concern is though that won't happen if the traffic lights are already there. But anyway,
be careful, we're not getting into debate.
Okay.
Sorry,
I was just going to say that the purposes of the discussions that we're having outside of the planning process are to ensure we don't want a scenario where signals get put in and then LCC come along a year later and rip it all out and put something else in. So those discussions are designed to avoid that scenario, and the wording of the condition also helps in that respect as well.
Presumably, Phil, these conditions or the final scheme will come before this committee?
What, the discharge of condition applications, you mean?
Yes, particularly applicable to the highways.
Well, that's not a matter for me to decide. That would be something that you need to discuss with the head of planning, whether it's appropriate for that to come back to the committee.
Jeff, do you wish to comment, please?
I think it's something we can discuss further, Chairman. It ordinarily, conditions would be a matter to be dealt with following submissions out with the committee process, but we can certainly discuss that as we take matters forward. Is that okay, Chairman?
Thank you for that, Jeff. Councillor Bisnell Singh Harris, please, to the case officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just switching my video on. Thank you very much, Phil. I still got Penny raised one of my points, so if I will go there, and possibly David covered part of it. I'm already concerned with regards to the Barrowby Road itself. Now, currently you have got a 40 miles per hour limit on there. Will there be any plan with the highway reducing that speed limit to 30? I'm concerning with regards to a pedestrian, because there's no provision whatsoever made on that road for pedestrian crossing, because obviously people will be accessing the other side for the shops that is in Barrowby itself, the villages. Also, will the road be widened, the junctions? Because I feel probably a separate cycle lane should be created on the road as opposed to be on the footpath together with the pedestrian.
Thank you, Harish. Phil?
So I believe that LCC highways are already in the process of downgrading the speed limit there. They've also got wider plans to downgrade Barrowby Road once the Grantham Southern Relief Road opens. So it'll no longer be a through road. I understand that lots of local residents have had concerns about the traffic on Barrowby Road. That will considerably reduce once the Grantham Southern Relief Road is open. There is also on the plans for these applications, it does show a cycleway going along Barrowby Road adjacent to this development. But LCC have got further plans to they're calling it the greening, Barrowby Road greening, and by that they mean, rather than it being a kind of a trunk road, which effectively it is now, it would be a much more of a residential, low trafficked road with more priority for pedestrians, cyclists and public transport. They haven't worked up the scheme yet to any great deal of detail, but they are committed to doing that. So in a few years' time, the whole character of Barrowby Road will have changed from a traffic dominated trunk road with articulated lorries, going through the centre of Grantham. It will be, very, very different in character, much less traffic, much more priority for pedestrians, public transport and cyclists. So,
thank you, Phil.
Can I come down, Mr. Chairman, briefly?
If it is a question, Harish, yes.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I feel, is there a time scale or at any point of the development when these things should be in place?
I can help Phil there. The county highways are doing a very in-depth study on it, and I think we will get the opportunity to look at that at some later point in time, Harish. Time frame, no. There's no definite time, because it's so dependent on a lot of other things and a lot of other ducks falling into place, if that's the right expression. Phil, do you want to add any more?
No, I think you expressed that very well, Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Can we move on to Councillor Baxter? Ashley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to bring up the site plan from the presentation? I've got a question which is similar to that of Harish, which is about the pedestrian cycle infrastructure. From what you've just said, it sounds as if to cycle to Grantham from the site, you'd have to go onto Barrowby Road and down. I just wondered what, if any, cycle and pedestrian infrastructure is on the site.
I think if you're referring to Barrowby Road itself, Ashley, I think the county, in conjunction with ourselves, are still working out a scheme when all the heavy vehicles have been taken out by the Southern Relief Road. So I don't know quite whether there's a great deal of merit. We've got the Phil's brought the plan
Right,
up.
Okay, so on the tree-lined avenues and on the, I don't know what you call the kind of green path. You don't call it a green belt, do you? The strip of green going left, right across the site.
This bit.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a cycle infrastructure and a pedestrian infrastructure to enable one to walk from one end to the other or take a wheelchair? That's probably a better way of doing it because it gets around the mud. Is it possible to take a wheelchair from the left-hand side of the site to the right-hand side of the site? And also, is it possible to cycle on a dedicated path on the north-south routes?
So this issue has been looked at very carefully. We've done a lot of work, and the applicants and ourselves have done a lot of work with Lincolnshire County Highways in ensuring that there is proper cycleway provision and pedestrian provision. There are actually other plans which I haven't got in this presentation which show the sort of transport movement network throughout the site, but I can point out where the cycleways are. So there is an east-west cycleway which runs from Poplar Farm, and that obviously accesses the school and the neighbourhood centre, and then goes further along through Poplar Farm.
Are you looking at? Are you pointing at top right?
Yeah, can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
That's where it joins onto Poplar Farm. Now that cycleway goes through Poplar Farm, past the school, past the neighbourhood centre, and then through the rest of Poplar Farm, and eventually joins Barrowby Road just before you get to the bridge. So as close as to the town centre as you can get with a cycleway. So you can cycle all the way from Rectory Farm to the town centre without having to go on Barrowby Road. And that cycleway runs alongside this road. It's 3-metre cycleway round there, and then we'll connect on to future stages of Rectory Farm there. There's also another cycleway which connects on just here. Again, it goes down to the school and neighbourhood centre, and it's a combination of dedicated cycleway and sort of minor roads.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
There's also a north-south one which goes from there up there. Again, a combination of the minor roads and the cycleways. There was some debate: should we have a separate standalone cycleway? But it was thought to be not a very good use of the land, and because these are minor residential streets rather than main roads, it's a combination of dedicated cycleway and the roads.
Super, thank you.
And also, to add to that, there is the cycleway that goes up there as well.
Up where? Oh, sorry, your head.
Just there.
Your head was in the way. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ashley. Ian, I don't know quite. Phil, you referred to some plans that you could show if required. I don't know quite. I think this was showing the junctions. Are those the ones you're referring to, Ian?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Did you pick that up, Phil? Is there any?
I can put those on the screen now.
Not quite sure where we'd go with it because it's quite possible they might change. Taking your point, Ashley, about cycleways, I can say quite definitely that the county are totally committed to footpath, footways and cycleways, etc. In the bid to reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah, so they say.
Well, okay, Ashley, I'll have a chat with you outside of this committee. Ian, are these the drawings you were asking for?
Yes, would Phil just give us a little bit of it, of talk about it, info?
Yep, sure. These are the drawings that are referred to in condition 24 and 25. The signalisation of the eastern arm of the A1A52 junction. Now, at the moment, when you're coming from Nottingham Way and you want to turn right, you give way. Actually, no, hang on, that's the wrong one. So I think this is actually the western arm rather than the eastern arm, but they're essentially the same, the western arm and the eastern arm. So at the moment, sometimes it takes ages to come out of the junction onto the A52, and likewise turning from the A52 onto the slip road. Traffic lights will be installed, which would vastly improve the flow of traffic and make it more convenient for drivers either coming off or going onto the A1, onto the A52.
Has that helped you, Ian? Councillor Selby?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm having a job to get to the bottom of the screen. Yes, that looks a great improvement. That does for that junction there. I can see where it's coming from. So yeah, that looks super.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Smith, Jackie Smith, please. Jackie, are you with us? Just bear with me, members. Jordan is going to see if Jackie has got any connection problems.
I've got it back, Bob.
Fine, thank you, Jackie. You've got a question to Phil Moore, please?
I did have, but it's been answered. I was going to ask about the speed limits.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm conscious that we've gone well over the 15 or so minutes that we allow ourselves for questions. Penny, you've come in with me. This will be the last question, please. I think we've covered pretty well all the potential issues. Is it a new issue, Penny?
It's pretty much still to do with traffic. If I could just clarify very, very quickly, when that traffic light system is in operation or whatever is put there, I take it cars can still go backwards and forwards along the A52 and access the A1. It's just lorries that will be banned. Can you clarify that? And also, going to the objector's point about the driveways being opposite these junctions, what consideration has been given to improving that situation for them? It's not usually seen as a good situation, is it, to have opposite driveways? Just very quick, thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Phil, are you?
Cars being banned. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. I mean, what I was saying was when the Grantham Southern Relief Road is built, there'll be no need for A52 through traffic to go through Grantham. It will be diverted around the bypass around the Grantham Southern Relief Road. So you won't get the scenario you do now with big articulated lorries rumbling through the centre of Grantham, because they don't need, unless they're going to somewhere within Grantham. LCC's plans to downgrade the road will make it less attractive for anybody who's tempted to, you know, not go on the bypass and go through town, as you sometimes get. In terms of the gentleman, the objector who's talking about the roundabout and the concerns about junctions on the A50 on Viability Road being opposite is another people's houses. Well, wherever you put any junctions there, they're going to be opposite somebody else's house. And please be assured that this has gone through a very, very rigorous process of assessment with the Highways Authority and the Open Design Review Panel. And they are of the view that these 3 accesses into the site, as they are proposed, are perfectly safe. And you know, it's easy to see how people would be concerned with current flows of traffic on the A52, because it is a busy road at the moment. It's a through trunk road, but when that traffic is all removed and it goes on the Grantham Southern Relief Road, the road will become an entirely different type of road. It'll be a low trafficked sort of local road, and so you won't have the problems of, you know, trying to turn out into a heavy flow of traffic as you do now. So, but this has all been assessed fully by the Highways Authority, and they're satisfied that there is no highway safety issue or any severe traffic capacity issue.
Thank you. Can I just come back quickly, Phil? You didn't quite clarify whether cars could still commute along the A52. So all the residents that live there, will they be able to go along the A52 to Nottingham and to the A1 and vice versa coming back from Nottingham? Or do they have to go all the way down the A1, up the ring road, back through town?
The answer to that is no, Penny. I think Phil made it clear. It's for through traffic, directing through traffic down onto the relief road, not for if I can call it domestic traffic. No, you can't prevent people coming onto that road and making their own way to their own properties. So no, it'll be for through traffic only, and it'll be a very strong signage to say through traffic only.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Could I add to Shelley's comment in the chat function, please, Mr. Broomhead? The chat function is for members of the committee only, and I would ask members of the public not to put any comment in there. If any further comments come in, I might have to remove those members of the public from the meeting. So we've had all the questions to the case officer and to the applicant. We now move on to debate. Do members wish to have a debate, or have we covered it all with the report and with question and answer?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask you, or as probably involved with the highways, they're on about this through road banning traffic. Will they be putting a weight limit to go through Grantham with like they've done in Stanford, which is very ineffective? And you know,
the straightforward answer to your question is quite probably, Mike, but as you well know, lorry drivers, if they're so minded, ignore weight limits. I get them coming through the village I live in, despite the fact that there's a 7.5 ton weight limit. But equally, if it is for access, then obviously the weight limit doesn't apply. So it's one of those difficult ones, isn't it?
It certainly is, because it doesn't apply in Stanford. The sat-nav's just foreign lorries. And
yeah, we're into debate now, Mike, but I do take your point. I have probably 4 or 5 complaints a week from residents in my village saying, what am I doing about these heavy HGVs coming through the village? The reason for there is a very weak bridge, and one day I've no doubt with the weight of lorries going over it permanently, that bridge will suffer a lot of damage. But we're back to policing issues, Mike, aren't we? Okay.
We certainly are, Bob, but thanks very much. I just thought I'd raise the point.
Thank you very much, Mike. There's nobody's requested to a debate. I'm quite content with moving that we approve the application with conditions, with the conditions mentioned. Robert, you indicated you wish to speak. My apologies.
I have, Chairman, and also there is David Bellamy and Ian Selby to follow me in the chat function, I think. Firstly, checks and balances. We've got the slightly amended conditions 10 and 18 in the presentation, so to make sure that they're there. Those of us that have been associated with planning for a long time have watched the journey of connectivity, particularly through Popular Farm, so that it integrates with Grantham. These applications for Rectory Farm have been worked on over 4 years, and they have been particularly hard to establish. I think some sort of explanation as to that journey. It has involved yourself, Chairman. It has involved on a couple of occasions the portfolio holder Richard Davis to be involved with LCC to actually evaluate where we've got to with highways issues. There's been a lot of consideration as to the, as it's known, the Barrowby Green Corridor, and the site visits on Monday for those members that attended were able to actually oversee the three and have described to them by Phil Moore the three entry accesses, and that this really has been a sensible outcome to the viability of the whole project, because that has been something that we've had to work to attain. I'd like to actually say it's been going on since 2016, and this is a particularly excellent presentation that we've now arrived at, and that the officer Phil Moore should really be commended for the journey along the way. It's not been an easy one. We have had difficulties in getting it to stack up. 106 contributions, that's been asked of, obviously, through the 106 agreements, and here we are. And so I think we have an assurance for connectivity with Popular Farm, and that it can be integrated to the community of Grantham. There are some fine views which Councillor Penny Milne has alluded to with the two church spires, and indeed from up on that elevation you can see right across Grantham, that obviously is in the basin as well. So I'd be very happy following debate to actually propose the approval of this application on the basis of what I've said, that we have spent since 2016 on this journey, and of course this is just the beginning of many other developments that will be happening with Barrowby, with Rectory Farm, and onto Barrowby Road, and across the whole development that will come out in phases. A question often asked, it's good to see it answered again, is that both of these applications before us have to have connectivity by road, by agreement that the roadways will be put in before people can live in them, of course. And I hope that other members will share the confidence of the journey that has been taken. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, you're muted.
Thank you, David. Sorry, Councillor Bellamy. David, to speak in debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just remember on one of the first committees I sat on, when we was debating the access onto the A52 dead opposite, and how controversial that was. And I'm so pleased that there is some mitigation put in on this to try and ease the Barrowby Road, and obviously because of the extra traffic that's going to be put on there. So I'm quite happy to support this, but I would like to stress how preferential it would be if that road, the A52 road, did go straight down onto the A1 rather than through a set of traffic lights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Councillor Bellamy. Councillor Selby. Ian, please speak in debate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, I agree with what David's just said. Yeah, thank you very much to Phil for the presentation. I wasn't actually on the site visit, but I do know the site. I've seen it before, so I'm comfortable with that. We'll start with a positive. The cycleways sound excellent, so yeah, that's certainly a positive. Mr. Hargreaves makes some very good points, I have to say, with regarding the congestion. That road's certainly going to be congested as you get down to the roundabout. One of the big problems we're going to have is, and we've seen it recently, is when the railway bridge needs repair. Every so often, and it's going to happen again, no doubt about it, until the highways put some sort of measures in there to alleviate that problem. You know, whether it's those chimes that you put in, there's all sorts of things that the county council could do to help alleviate problems there with the railway bridge, because when that road gets closed, as it frequently does, and then it congests and bungs up Dysart Road and the whole town, and it becomes an absolute nightmare for the town. So the county council certainly need to look at that again, in my view. The big issue for me, and it comes up every time we see an application for the high number of houses comes forward for the town, and we're going to be asking the question time and time again until the United Lincolnshire's Hospital Trust does something constructive about giving us our A&E 24/7 back. I mean, what do you do? Do you turn around and say, well, we're not going to build any more houses because we don't have the infrastructure for the health? Or do you turn around and say, right, we're going to build more houses, then the health trust, they've got to justify not giving us the service that our people deserve? And that's the big issue for me. It comes in with planning regulations somewhere along the line. I've no doubt whatsoever, with the infrastructure of the town. Yeah, that's the big issue. I mean, the town is expanding.
Can we keep to the subject matter of the application, please?
Yeah.
I think we're all sympathetic to what you're saying. We all understand what you're saying, but I think it's not the right. This is not the right vehicle.
As Mr. Chairman, to speak up for our infrastructure, and in particular the hospital. If we want to keep expanding the town, then we need those services for the people, is what I'm saying. So,
absolutely right. We all agree with you, Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jackie says she'll happy to second that. I'll come back to you, Jackie, when we get to that position. Councillor Baxter says we digress. He's absolutely right. I hope we pulled it back on track, Ashley. So can I move on to Councillor Bisnail Singh, please, Harish, to talk in the debate?
I'm just turning my video on, Mr. Chairman. Oh, crumbs, keep going off.
Your microphone's certainly on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, we can see you.
Oh, there, yeah, it's well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Phil, for the presentation and for the hard work that you have taken in. I read through this through the material provided, and I'm very pleased to see there's quite a lot of the features that is in here. We are really moving towards a truly eco-friendly sort of a development in here, and I welcome that, and I would like to see more of it. But I would like to see, as been mentioned by the developer, about having the houses to be more eco-friendly, more energy sort of saving facilities in there. The thing that I was a bit disappointed in, that there was only 10% of affordable houses where you have got a substantial 80% of the market value will be allowed. I would have liked to see a bit more, probably 30% of it to be on social housing. Because that's what we need.
I'm going to stop you there, if I may, please, because that has been explained to us in great detail when the applicants very kindly did a presentation to the members of the committee. We all understand what you're saying and where you're coming from in that regard, but it has to be horses for courses, and on this occasion, if we're going to move the whole of this development forward, we really need to be realistic and pragmatic. So we take on board entirely what you say, sympathetic to what you say, but on this occasion it's impossible to meet that, and the reduction has been agreed for some little time now, so that we can get this development not only on the books but on site, and get the properties built.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll support it.
Thank you, Harris. It's very kind. Penny, final contributor. I'm just going to ask Ashley Baxter. You said we digress, Ashley. Did you want to speak at all in the debate?
No, thanks, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. So Penny Milnes is the last one to indicate in the chat box. I'm taking this as the last speaker in debate. We have actually a proposal from Councillor Reid to approve the recommendation, seconded by Jackie Smith. And after Penny Milnes, I'm going to move to that vote, please. Penny?
Yes, I mean, obviously I'm in favour of this. Traffic is a big worry. I just want to put a little fraggy in, and for further consideration at some point, is do LCC and Highways England look at the where the traffic then goes to if we close the A52 to heavy lorries? For example, will they start to come through Great Gonaby down to the Asda roundabout and through town? Are there going to be those sorts of closures as well?
I don't think we can answer that question, Penny. We haven't got that information. They'll use the relief road is designed to take traffic out of the Grantham town centre. Nobody can actually second guess what lorries or drivers will do when that has been done, whether they'll find an alternative route to beat the system, if you like. But if they do, then it will be down to County Highways and Highways England to address that problem when it is there. I don't think we can really, don't think it's going to be fruitful debating it, Penny, to be truthful.
No,
at this point in time.
Highlight it, yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you for that. Jackie, you said you're happy to second the approval. Do you want to speak, or are you content to move on?
Just a very short one. Glad to see that it's finally progressing. We've all been looking, I think, and waiting and praying for the relief road to get moving, and we're getting 2 for 1 here. We're getting the housings getting moving and the relief road. So I think it's lovely to see it happening.
Thank you for that, Jackie. So with the members' permission, I'm going to take Robert Reid's proposal to approve the recommendation subject to conditions and Section 106 agreement, seconded by Jackie Smith. Naomi, could you do the roll call vote, please? And this is for S16 2816.
Mr. Chairman, this is for both applications, yes?
We have to vote separately on each application, Harish. So we're voting first of all on S16 2816, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go through the roll call. If members can please indicate if you're voting for or against or wish to abstain. Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Cadbury Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Abstain.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
So that proposition is carried. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Naomi. We now move on to a vote on agenda item 5, S16 2819. Naomi, please.
Thank you. Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnal Singh.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Cadbury Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
Abstain.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
So that proposition is also carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. We now move on to agenda item 6, S201400, and this is in the hands of Chris Brown. Chris, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Planning Committee. I'll just get the presentation loaded up for you.
While Chris is doing that, we have one speaker in this, which is a Mr. Sam Harrison.
I'd be grateful, Chairman, if you could let me know when the presentation is available to view.
Yeah, we're there. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent, thank you. Right, good morning, Planning Committee. This application is for the erection of a replacement free-range egg-laying unit with associated infrastructure, including feed silos, hard standing areas, and an attenuation drainage pond. The key issues raised as part of this application include the impact on the character of the area, impact on neighbouring residential amenity, and impact on the woodland. This is a high-level aerial view of the site taken from Google Maps. You can see the application site is located to the north of Grimsthorpe and to the west of Ellsthorpe and located in open countryside. With a further zoomed in low-level aerial view of the site, so this shows the existing 7 poultry buildings which are spread across the site with roughly 450 metres between the one to the north and the one to the south. Of the 7 poultry buildings shown, the 6 older poultry buildings are proposed to be demolished and replaced through this application. The existing buildings are located north and south of an existing farm unit with a farmhouse and collection of agricultural barns in the centre of the site. I'll just use the laser pointer to show you the one that is staying. So it's this building here is the more modern building on the site. It's proposed to be kept. The other 6 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, if you could follow my pointer there. The red line of the application site shows the site of the new barn with the 6 existing poultry buildings removed. And again, if you can note down sort of towards the top left of the screen, you can see the more modern poultry building is to be kept as part of the proposal. So the first photo, this is a long distance view to the site from the A151. This is taken with the formal non-used entrance to Grimsthorpe Castle directly behind me, sort of the entrance with the fancy gates, if you like, that opens out onto the A151. The existing poultry buildings can be seen from here above the hedge line, so that's you can see the white plastic sheet roofing in the centre of the screen there. And this second photo, so this is taken from exactly the same spot. This is now zoomed in again to show the existing poultry buildings on the site. And so all the poultry buildings in that view, of which you can see 2 to the left and 2 to the right of the central building in the centre of the site, they're all to be removed as part of the application. And you can see the woodland there over on the right-hand side of the shot. This is now the view in from the access road to the site. Again, you can see 3 of the poultry buildings here to be removed. Again, now this photo is from closer on towards the farm buildings to the site. You can now see Breaches Wood clearly as the backdrop to the site. The poultry building in the foreground there to the woodland will be removed as part of the application. This photo shows the central core of farm buildings within the site. So the farmhouse we'll come to in a second is on the left-hand side of this picture shown, and again then the woodland and one of the poultry buildings to be removed is on the right-hand side. Again, this is a further picture of the farmyard, so in addition to the free-range poultry buildings on the site, they also keep cows on the site as well through this collection of agricultural barns in the centre. This is now Home Farm. This is the central farmhouse within the site, and it's a Grade 2 listed building. This is the view from the farmhouse. So the farmhouse is directly behind the photo here. So this is looking east towards past the existing farm buildings, and again towards Breaches Wood, you can see in the background of the photo. Again, taken from exactly the same spot with the farmhouse behind me. This again is one of the poultry buildings to be removed. I'll use the mouse, if you can see the mouse, I'll use the pointer if that's easier. The proposed poultry building will be located with the backdrop of the woodland behind, along where the pointer's going now, and slightly further south of this picture as well. And again, this is the view now through the farmyard to the woodland at the back. Again, I'll use the pointer. So the farm building will be seen against the backdrop of the woodland behind here, so there'll be very limited views. This is the existing site plan. So this shows again the existing 7 poultry buildings spread across the site, across the central farmyard, with 6 of the existing buildings to be demolished. Now the proposed site plan, so the proposal is for 1 large modern building to replace the 6 being demolished. There's no increase in the number of chickens being kept on site, instead with all the chickens from the existing 6 buildings to be demolished to be moved into the new building. The proposed elevations and floor plans, so this proposes 1 long building consisting of 2 livestock areas and then a central egg packing room in the centre of the 2 buildings. Access for the chickens to the land outside the building is provided as the chickens are free range. The applicant has also provided as part of the application a tree planting plan. So this proposes 2 large areas of tree planting shown to the north and south of the proposed buildings. Exact species and details haven't been provided, with this to be conditioned, and that's set out as part of condition 3. In terms of evaluation of the application, the proposal is for the replacement of 6 existing poultry buildings with 1 single modern building, with no intensification of use on the site. There is no harm to heritage assets considered. The proposed building is not considered to impact on the setting of the listed home farm, which is the agricultural dwelling, due to the separation from the farmhouse and the existing agricultural buildings in that separation area, and with no impact considered on Grimsthorpe Castle, with long distances between the 2, and the proposed modern building, constructed in modern materials and in a green colour, considered to sit better in the landscape than the existing 6 buildings that are to be demolished. There is no impact on residential amenity considered, with no nearby dwellings to the proposed building, and improvement in odour emissions compared to the existing site setup. As the proposal includes demolition of 6 old and inefficient buildings with a replacement with 1 modern building, there is a significant betterment in ammonia and nitrogen deposition and odour emissions compared to the existing. It is noted that the Woodland Trust have objected to the proposal and have requested a 30-metre setback from the breaches wood, which is above the 16 metres proposed. However, this is not considered to be sufficient reasons behind their request for a 30-metre setback, with the proposal to result in a significant betterment in terms of impact on the woodland compared to the existing site. Further, the proposal is considered to sit better in the landscape compared to the existing site setup, with the modern building in juniper green colour considered to sit within the backdrop of breaches wood and with the further tree planting proposed as set out on the previous slide. There are no objections received from any statutory consultees, including Natural England, the Environment Agency and the Forestry Commission. In addition, no objections have been received from the Parish Council, and there are no neighbour or public objections. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions. I'll hand back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chris. We have Mr. Harrison from the applicants with us. Mr. Harrison, are you okay to address committee?
Yes, good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Sam, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and good morning, members. This application seeks full planning consent for the erection of a free-range egg-laying unit within an existing family-run farm. It should be noted that the business provides employment for Mr. and Mrs. Bradley as company directors, along with a further 9 full-time workers and 5 part-time workers. The nature of this proposal is one of replacement. The applicants are proposing to upgrade their existing operations, replacing ageing units which are nearing the end of their useful working life and utilising outdated technologies with a single purpose-built modern free-range egg-laying shed. The proposal represents an all-round betterment, as you've just heard. The replacement unit will house hens which would otherwise be housed within the existing buildings at home farm, one of which is to be retained. No increasing livestock is proposed. The proposed building will utilise best available techniques, which include high-velocity ridge-mounted fans which aid in the dispersal of odours and atmospheric pollutants. Considering the substantial upgrading technologies and day-to-day operations, any existing perceived impacts on sensitive habitats or residential receptors will be vastly reduced. The application also proposes additional tree planting, which will not only enhance biodiversity, but will also aid in further screening the proposal from wider landscape views. The application has no objections from any statutory consultees and a clear recommendation of approval from your planning officer. It is therefore respectfully requested that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. We now move on to questions to the applicant and case officer. Does any member have any question for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ian, questions to the applicant.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, for your views there. My question is, by removing the 6 buildings that you refer to in the application and creating one larger building, obviously I'm assuming that the management would be easy of this. However, if you was to have, say, an outbreak of avian flu or some sort of infection with the birds, excuse the pun, but would you not be putting all your eggs in one basket? And if that's the case, how would you manage that situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, Mr. Harrison.
Well, yes, I would have to agree with you. However, you can't work on a worst case scenario. We're providing all around betterment, and in the eventuality of an outbreak of such as you've described, formal procedures would be followed in accordance with appropriate guidance. We can't. It's a matter of scales of economy and operational efficiency. You can't just assume the worst and therefore have where would you stop with such a suggestion? Is 1,000 hens a shed more efficient in such an outbreak than 500 hens a shed and such? So yeah, I would agree. You are quite right. Working on a worst case scenario, but we can't operate businesses in such manners.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Councillor Milnes, Penny, please, to the applicant.
Yes, I think I was going to ask a question of the case officer. My message didn't quite come through properly. Can I do that, or shall we continue with the applicant?
Sorry, we're putting questions to the applicant. We'll go to the case officer after the questions to the applicant. Councillor Baxter, is your question to the applicant?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Two questions. One is, I understand the new building would be more efficient than the old buildings. Are you using any kind of renewable energy, and is there any byproduct which is being used to generate energy in any way? I'm thinking of either solar or biomass or some other kind of recycling fuel. And secondly, I'm a bit confused about the Woodland Trust objection. I'm interested in the applicant's view on that, and particularly, are we taking down any mature trees? Is there although the new building is going to be close to the ancient woodland, are we actually encroaching on the woodland at all?
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Ashley, Mr. Harrison, to respond.
Your second question is quite a layered and detailed question, which is requires a slightly more complex answer. But in terms of energy requirements, there's no heating requirement for free range sheds. They're more or less self-regulated in terms of heat. So the energy requirements are just very minimal in relation to lighting and like muck belts and just general equipment and such. So no, there isn't any energy renewable energy source. However, the energy requirements are literally minimal. It wouldn't be financially feasible to install such a system. Some sheds have solar panels on the roof and such, but it's to be quite frank, it's a token gesture. So no real requirement, to be frank. With broiler sheds for meat, the birds reared for meat, there are heating requirements, and that's where you generally get like your ground source heat pumps or your biomass boilers or something of the sort. So free range, not necessarily. Now, in relation to the Woodland Trust, we are agricultural planning consultants primarily, so we deal with many farms, and it's amazing how common ancient woodland is, to be frank, and therefore a lot of farms are within a relatively close proximity to ancient woodland, say within a kilometre or two. Now, the Woodland Trust, to be frank, attempt to offer a level of protection to ancient woodland that isn't backed up by policy. Now, SSIs, SAC, Special Areas Conservations and such, are designated sites which are afforded a high level of protection by the National Planning Policy Framework and the Environment Agency and Natural England, and the list goes on. The Woodland Trust essentially try to offer the same level of protection to that of the aforementioned sites. Now, it's simply wrong. It's the equivalent of a policeman pulling you over for doing 40 mile an hour in a 60. It isn't backed up. So that's the first problem. The second issue with the objection is it's not based on science. So we are, as the planning officer has outlined, and you know, no objection from Natural England, the Environment Agency, your ecologists, and so on and so forth. We are all in agreement that we are presenting a betterment. So the existing sheds are far worse for the environment and the ancient woodland than the proposed. Now, the ancient woodland are objecting, I believe, because we are moving sheds closer to the woodland, which is, in basic terms, understandable. However, we have provided a root protection zone calculation to British standards, which shows there is no issue. We've provided all the relevant information to show there is no issue. We aren't removing any trees. We aren't encroaching on any trees. The crown spread of the trees will be protected. The root protection zones are protected. We've provided all the necessary calculations. There is no issue. As far as we can see, the objection is simply it's not backed up by any way. And I had a lengthy discussion with the planning officer regarding this issue, and we don't see any relevant reason or reasonable necessity to move the shed. Therefore, we have stuck with the original plan, which is backed up by a plethora of information, including an ammonia assessment, which demonstrates betterment, including root protection zones to British standard. So we don't see any necessity to move it, and no trees will be impacted.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Can I move on? Councillor Mills-Penny, you wish now to ask a question of the applicant.
I think he's sort of answered my questions, which were similar to Ashley with the confusion over the Woodland Trust. Can I just confirm with you, Sam, that you're not willing to move the building another 15 metres away from the woodland to avoid this confusion of pollution onto ancient woodland, which after all is irreplaceable?
Well, respectfully, I don't believe there is any confusion. I just believe it's a request that's unreasonable and not backed up by any evidence whatsoever. The Woodland Trust make a habit of objecting to planning applications of this ilk, irrespective of whether or not they are backed up, irrespective of whether or not we're actually presenting any perceived detriment to ancient woodland. So, yes, I mean, in answer to your question, we are happy to move the shed if it is deemed necessary. However, we have assessed the situation and come to the conclusion, along with your own statutory consultees, the Natural the Environment Agency, your ecologists, the landscape officer or tree officer, we don't believe there's a necessity. This is one consultant, one objection from a non-statutory consultee who believes there is an issue. It isn't backed up by anyone else. We have looked at the situation, and we don't believe there's a necessity to move it. And we would move it happily if it was deemed essential, but it isn't. And we've talked this over with all the necessary people, and we've come to the conclusion that we are where we are, and we don't believe there's a problem. Now, in moving the shed comes other issues. We need to reconsult. We need to readdress drainage strategies. We need to undertake revised ammonia assessments, all at substantial cost, I might add. So we just feel the request is unreasonable and not backed up by any evidence whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That's all the questions indicated in the chat box from members. So thank you very much, Mr. Harrison, for...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Hang on, Rosemary, you said you want to ask questions of the officer, not the applicant.
Oh, okay,
Thank you. So there are no further questions to the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Harrison, for being with us and for the honesty and frankness with which you have answered questions from members. Very much appreciated. So we now move on to questions to the officer. And Rosemary, you're the name in the chat box, please. Councillor Cabry-Brown, Rosemary?
Yes, I was trying to unmute, Mr. Chairman.
You're unmuted.
Could I please ask the officer, I'm sure I heard him say that these sheds are going to be painted green. I'm sure I heard that twice. Can I emphasise that you have to be very careful which green you choose? And also, can we be quite strict about this? Because there is a very pale, almost dove grey green, which is marvellous for mingling in green countryside. There's also this ghastly, bright green that looks like emerald and sticks out like a sore thumb. We also had this issue many years ago.
Rosemary, can I stop you there? Because you've gone from a question into debate. Can we ask Chris to answer the question as to the colour of the paint, and then I'll bring you back if you wish to add more in the debate. Chris?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cabry-Brown. So in answer to the question about the colour, so it's proposed as juniper green. So we have looked into that and we consider juniper green to be acceptable, and it's been chosen because it's got the woodland as the backdrop, and with sort of the grass fields around it, so it should blend into the landscape considerably better than the 6 existing buildings do. So it's juniper green, and rather than sort of paint as such, it's sort of metal profile sheeting that will be on the outside of the building, but it's all in green.
Thank you.
Does that make you happy, Rosemary?
Yes, thank you, Chris. That's fine. It's answered the question.
Thank you, Rosemary. There are no other questions to Chris, the case officer. Do you wish to have a debate, members? There's nobody indicating in the chat box that question to... Sorry, Penny, who are you wanting to ask a question of?
Sorry, my chat box is being a bit weird this morning. I wanted to go back to ask a question to Chris, if that's all right, please.
Okay, carry on.
Chris, bearing in mind this confusion with the Woodland Trust and the fact that Natural England and the Forestry Commission both just refer to their standing advice and don't give this bespoke advice, which presumably the Woodland Trust are doing as an authority on ancient woodland and this pollution. And the fact that even the Forestry Commission have asked for a tree planting plan along that eastern edge and at least 15 metres. And the fact that the other egg-laying buildings are all scattered and a lot further away from the ancient woodland. Can you just please try and explain to us why it's not considered acceptable from your point of view to just move this building another 15 metres away from the woodland, where everybody would then be happy with any effects that it causes?
Chris, do you wish to respond?
Bearing in mind, sorry, not just tree canopy, but woodland edge and soils and all that goes with ancient woodland, not just root protection and canopy. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Milnes. So looking into the objection that the Woodland Trust have put in, so I'll come to the 30-metre buffer zone in a minute, but effectively they've set out in their objections or 3 specific points. So first is sort of noise, light and dust from construction and operation. Second is if the woodland overhangs any public areas, then they don't want any sort of lopping or cutting back of trees unnecessarily. And then thirdly is about the drainage, so any hydrological impacts from hard standing areas and water runoff. So taking each of those in turn, so First of all, in terms of noise, light and dust during construction, there's not considered to be any impact on the woodland during construction at all. It's all metal profile sheeting. It all goes up very, very quickly. It's not like building a house, for instance. These buildings sort of fly up very quickly. There's not considered to be any sort of impact from there. In terms of the woodland overhanging any areas and then chopping back, this is similar to the question Councillor Baxter asked of the applicant, and effectively the building's set back sufficiently from the woodland so it won't impact, there won't be any canopy of the woodland overhanging the building. It's set sufficiently back from the root protection area. I think that's 4 metres or just less than 4 metres from what I remember, and the building's set back 16 metres from the woodland, so there won't be any need to cut back or prune back any trees sort of unnecessarily. And then thirdly, with regards to drainage, so the only drainage that will be going into the natural system, if you like, is only the surface water runoff, effectively the rain that falls on the roof of the building. And that will all go into a drainage pond where it will then be controlled release into an existing drainage ditch, which is along the side of the woodland. So that's only the surface water runoff, i.e. the rain that bounces off the roof of the building. All the water from cleaning out the buildings will go into its own separate dirty water storage tank and then be vacuum pumped out of that when necessary. So there's no adverse runoff considered. So they're the 3 main points that the Woodland Trust have asked us to look at. So that's what we've addressed. Then with regards to the 30-metre buffer zone, I appreciate that that's what we've asked for, but as Mr. Harrison said, I have had a conversation with Mr. Harrison when I took over the application from the previous case officer about this. And then again, as Mr. Harrison pointed out, they've asked for the 30-metre buffer zone, but there's nothing really behind the 30-metre buffer zone. If they said it needs to be 30 metres because of where the trees are sited or the types of trees or anything like that, then or if it had come from one of the statutory consultees, then as Mr. Harrison said, I'm sure they would move it if there was considered a necessary need to move the building to be 30 metres away. But in this case, they've considered to address all the 3 key points raised by the Woodland Trust. It meets all the standing advice from Natural England, they haven't objected. It meets the standing advice from the Environment Agency, they haven't objected. And likewise from the Forestry Commission as well. So we're happy that whilst the Woodland Trust have objected, we're happy that effectively all the points, the individual specific key points of the Woodland Trust objection have been overcome through the information the applicant has provided. They didn't initially propose or didn't initially submit all the details of the canopy and the root protection area, so we asked them to confirm that, and they have since confirmed that as well, so that's all acceptable.
Thank you, Chris. We should
remind me if there's more to the question than that. Sorry.
Well, we had actually moved away from questions to debate, so I'm going to pull it back to debate after Ian Selby's asked his question. Then we go to debate.
Mr. Chairman, I also put into question to officer, Mr. Chairman.
Well, that you've as far as I bear. All right, you first, Harris, then Ian, then we go on. We refer back to debate. So, Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chris. Chris, my very simple understanding is free-range chickens of our farm. The free-range chicken runs about in the ground, so obviously there's flaps on this building that the chicken will be running about outside in the ground. Or is that not so? Is that they're all enclosed?
I'd have thought that was a question to the applicant, but Chris, if you're happy to answer it, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Bisnafsey. I'm happy to answer that. So yes, the building does have sort of automated openings or flaps, if you like, along the side of the building. So the chickens are allowed out during the day. They have a wide area to roam around outside the building. Before then, they'll all go into the building at night. So all of the existing buildings that are to be demolished, they're exactly the same setup as well. So they all have sort of a fenced-in area around them, so the chickens can roam out during the day and then in the building at night. The only thing I'd add to that is that's not shown in the pictures that I've presented, because at the moment with the avian flu, so when I visited the site, I sort of parked up my car. There was sort of a checkpoint with a I don't know how to describe it, sort of like a bleach spray effectively. So I sprayed my boots. I walked sort of the last 200 metres to the site and sprayed my boots as I left the site as well. I didn't drive right up to it. So the chickens are being kept indoors at the moment, so hence they weren't shown in my pictures as roaming around. But yes, there is sufficient area for the chickens to roam outside the building.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the question, Harris. Final question, please, from Ian, Councillor Selby. Ian, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask Chris if it's possible, please, to have an overhead plan put up on the screen so we can see exactly where the new building will be in relation to the woods, please, if that's possible.
Is that possible, Chris?
That's fine. Yeah, if you just bear with me a second, I'll load the presentation.
Thank you kindly, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got it, Chris.
Excellent, thank you. I'll just try and find the best one. So that's the low-level aerial view. So that gives you an indication of where the existing buildings are. So if you can see can you see my mouse sort of circling around on the woodland? Yeah, I can see a couple nodding. So this is Breaches Wood here, this bit here, and it's a plantation on an ancient woodland site. Is Breaches Wood here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 buildings that to be demolished. And then if I go through to the red line plan there, so again this is more zoomed out, you can't quite see, but if I flick back you can see the existing buildings in the line of the woodland. And then here's the building here. So whilst it's shown on this sort of super zoomed out aerial view, there's actually a gap of 16 metres before you get to the trees from the edge of the building. That down at the bottom here, the extension of the red line, that's the drainage pond down there, and then that goes into the existing drainage ditch which runs along the side of the woodland. And the buildings in the middle there, all those agricultural barns that I showed you in the pictures here. And then this out here is the existing building that's the only one of the existing buildings to be kept. So if I go through the pictures just quickly, so I'm trying to find which one the best one is. So here, so the building will be seen sort of along the backdrop of the woodland there. And again with the next one, so through that gap in the farm buildings, you'll be able to see the building sort of through the back there. And then I think the better one was slightly, yeah, so this one here, again, the building will be up against the woodland. You'll see it sort of from there. But as we've discussed, it's very low level. It'll be all in green compared to all the existing ones with the white plastic on them. So it'll be set back against the woodland there. Is that okay, Councillor Selby?
Excellent, Chris. Thank you kindly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Chris. Okay, looking in the chat box, we've got 2 members wishing to recommend and want to second. So Mike Exton, you're happy to second, and perhaps call on Helen Crawford to Mike Exton to propose, Helen Crawford to second. Councillor Reid, Robert, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I think the only squidgy bit in this application, if I may use that word, is the distance of the proposed development from the woodland. But we are assured that it meets the criteria that it should meet, so I don't think we're in any position to recommend that it's recited at the desired 30 metres. Otherwise, I'm sure many members, we would unanimously agree to that. But we are where we are. It does meet criteria, and that's why I'm quite happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So, Mike, could you formally propose, and Helen Crawford, could you formally second?
Bob, sorry, I did ask to speak in the debate. It's Penny.
I thought we'd moved on from there. Go on then, Penny. Last speaker.
Right, well, just to follow up on what Robert has just said, I think, we can all agree this is betterment. I think the landscaping plans, obviously, are wonderful. It's quite a good application in lots of ways. It is just this distance from the ancient woodland, and there is confusion about it because Natural England normally only report on the SSSIs, and they actually refer you to local trusts for more local information. And here we have the Woodland Trust, they are an authority on ancient woodland, being really quite worried about it and recommending this 30-metre zone and some planting. Actually, the Forestry Commission also are concerned about it. and are recommending a buffer zone of at least 15 metres and also some planting, a tree planting plan. And I think, you know, we're falling between stools here with these advices that we're getting. Ancient woodland is irreplaceable. We're not supposed to affect it in any way. We do have a duty to look at this properly. And Natural England themselves say in their additional advice, they only provide bespoke advice in exceptional circumstances, and they're generally commenting only on the SSSIs, not these little local woods. So I am still very concerned that it's too close to that wood. And, you know, I think we do have a duty to protect. And the applicant himself said these ancient woods are common. We have a lot of them in those areas, that middle area of our district. I believe we have to get this right as to whether we're falling between stools on this advice. And Natural England's standing advice is also flexible. They say you can vary these buffer zones depending on impact, and here we could have a potential air pollution impact. The Woodland Trust say, you know, they quote what Natural England's standing advice is, you're likely to need a larger buffer zone. So I still think there is confusion here. I think we've not actually bottomed who's right and who's wrong with it. And the statutory consultees centred not know too much really. They just refer to standing advice. And I do think the Forestry Commission are concerned. They say they don't object or whatever, but they have expressed concerns here on it. So in my book, there is still confusion. I would prefer that we ask the applicant to reconsider and move it further away. After all the other chicken sheds are a long way from that woodland. I think the nearest is 250 metres away. And whilst they are more polluting, they were further away and scattered. So I'm still extremely concerned about the impact on the ancient woodland. I don't feel we've bottomed the situation properly with these consultees. And I would actually prefer to defer it and ask the applicant if they would consider moving the building. I know it's got a cost. I'd have rather we'd done this before we got to this stage at committee, and as I understand it, Chris probably has talked to the applicant about it, who seems very hard over at not moving it. He said he would if he was requested.
Can I stop you there, Penny, because the applicant didn't say that at all. The applicant said he wouldn't change it, and he didn't see any reason to change it, and the costs involved, etc. So I don't think it's right to say he said he would reconsider. I think quite to the contrary, he was quite adamant that he wouldn't reconsider, and we have to make a decision as members of this committee on that basis.
Just to come back there, Bob, I did write it down. He said he wasn't willing to move it. You're absolutely right. It was an unreasonable request. There was no necessity. But he would if it was deemed essential. And I'm trying to say, where do we all sit with this advice on ancient woodland, which is irreplaceable?
I think we have to take the advice that we've been given from our own case officer and the evidence before us, Penny. It's then down to each member of this committee as to how they determine which way they're going to vote. Now, I did say a while ago that I was drawing this debate to a close, but we're now getting more speakers. Councillor Baxter is the last name. I'm not taking any more names in the debate. I think we've given this application. Will you wait for me, Ian? This application has been given a very fair hearing. So we have got Councillor Ian Selby, then Councillor David Bellamy, then Councillor Baxter. And after Councillor Baxter, despite any more names going in the chat box, I'm drawing this debate to a close. Councillor Selby.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I've viewed this from Google Maps, and that's probably a good place to look at this, I have to say, Mr. Chairman. And you can see from looking at it, by removing the buildings that the applicant is proposing to do, you can see that would then free up other areas of the land then to manage the whole area much better. And I can understand why he would want to put this new building along the edge, relatively near to that woodland as it's being proposed. And I can totally understand where Penny's coming from as well. I'm pleased I asked the question before to the applicant. I hope he didn't mind me asking the question. If he is happy with putting, as I said, all your eggs in one basket, then I'm comfortable with that as well. As long as he is aware of, as I say, I'm pleased to raise the issue, and I'm sure he probably understood why I asked that question as well. Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with this application, Mr. Chairman. If this goes through, I wish the applicant all the best with it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Ian. Councillor Bellamy, David, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm struggling with this a little bit because if we've got all this space to put screening in north and south, why can't we move it over and put screening into the east where the ancient woodland is? And the other point I'd like to make, I'd have thought with building consultants that this sort of thing was entirely foreseeable and that there were likely to be differences of opinion and conflicts. And bearing in mind we've got all that room spare to put extra planting in, moving it over at the first planning stage a little bit and putting a buffer zone in which the Forestry Commission said should go in, not just the Woodland Commission, the Woodland Trust. The Forestry Commission actually said it would be preferential to have a buffer zone with planting in it. So yes, I'm struggling with it.
Thank you for that, David. Councillor Baxter, Ashley, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Penny for pointing out, I think it's paragraph 5.10. I asked the applicant about the Woodland Trust question, and I was quite pleased with the answer that he gave. I'm usually quite cautious of believing what the applicant says without any context, but he does seem to have thought about it. In 5.10.2 on page 80, I think, it talks about the tree planting plan and the forest. So the question seems to be about how much deterioration there is to the ancient woodland. We're not removing any trees, but there might be some deterioration because of the ammonia. The Forestry Commission appear to say that if we rejigged the tree planting plan, then you could mitigate some of the problems. So I'd support this proposal, but perhaps publicly encourage the applicant to reconsider the tree planting plan, bearing in mind the comments of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Chris, do you wish to make any response to those pleas for landscaping, etc.?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councillors. Yes, just to respond to that final point of Councillor Baxter's, really. Just bear with me 2 seconds while I find it. So you propose condition 3. So with regards to the tree planting plan, we've asked for, so proposed condition 3 is for landscaping. Before any construction work above ground is commenced, details of all soft landscaping work should be submitted to and approved in writing to us, and that's to include planting details, written specifications and the schedules of plants and species. And below that, we've added as part of the condition, the submitted landscaping details shall be in broad accordance with the submitted tree planting plan. So what that does allow is a bit of flexibility. So if the applicant's happy to go along with what Councillor Baxter's requested and add further tree planting between the building and the woodland, then that can all fall under that existing condition 3. There is that flexibility there.
Thank you for that, Chris. I think the members were probably a little bit stronger than saying if they fell in line. Is it something that we can strongly enforce is the wrong word, but strongly recommend?
It's something, so with that condition 3 at the moment, like I said, I've added the submitted landscaping details should be in broad accordance with the submitted tree planting plan. So I can add a sentence to that if committee wish to suggest so. It'd be the submitted landscaping details should be in broad accordance with the submitted tree planting plan. And then in addition to that, a further sentence to say further tree planting shall take place between the building and the woodland.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. David, you've jumped to your microphone. Councillor Belham.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask for clarification there on what Chris said.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you make it any clearer, Chris, please?
Well, all I was offering is to add any further wording to that condition 3, so it's sort of exactly what members would wish to see.
The only point I was making, Chris, is there don't seem to be any room between the hedge and the forest. So,
hang on. What we're doing here is asking Chris to go back to the applicant and try and do a bit more negotiation on tree planting and where it goes.
Chair, I thought there was 16 metres.
We're getting less. Chris?
Yes, there is 60 metres, as Councillor Baxter points out. There's a hedgerow in there as well. So yes, so there will be sufficient distance in there to add some extra trees within that tree planting plan that's proposed. The tree planting plan that they've submitted shows just 2 broad areas. Like I said, there's no details to it, hence the wording of the condition.
Thank you for that, Chris.
There's only five
Hang on, Harish, please. I've not asked you to speak yet. And I did say I was calling this debate to a halt, and I am calling it to a halt. Chris has taken on board the comments that members have made about the tree planting. Mr. Harrison, I think, is still in the meeting, and I'm sure he has listened to those concerns and requests, etc. So I'm now going to move on to the vote, which I actually said I was going to do about 10 minutes ago. Councillor Exton, would you be content to move the recommendation, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, quite happy to move the recommendation and any other conditions or wording that the officer prepared to put in.
As indicated.
As indicated, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Bellamy, Councillor Crawford.
I would like to second that motion. I think one better, more efficient building, better husbandry for the poultry is well deserved for the poultry.
Thank you very much, Helen. So can we now move to the debate, please, Naomi?
Vote.
Vote.
We've done the debate.
Sorry, did I say debate? You've got me going, folks. Can we move to the vote, please?
Christmas has come early again.
So I'll do a roll call if members could please indicate if you wish to vote for, against or abstain. Councillor David Bellamy.
Against.
Councillor Harish Bisnath Singh.
Against, too close to the woodland.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Cabery Brown.
For.
Councillor Penny Milnes.
Against.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Rosemary, can you take your microphone off, please?
Yeah, it's not my dog, by the way.
No, I know who knows.
Councillor Selby, could you please just confirm what you said, because I didn't catch it?
Yes, it's 4.
Thank you. Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
And Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
Okay, I can confirm that proposition's been carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. So we now move on to the final application, which is S20 1253. Is this Phil Jordan?
Thank you, Chairman. It is. I'll just load the presentation up. Thank you, Chairman. Can you just confirm that's now appeared on your screen, the presentation?
Yeah, we've got it there.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. I've got my microphone back.
Good afternoon, members. This application is S20 1253. It's a Section 73 application to vary Condition 2 of an existing permission S18 2111, which was the demolition of 2 existing dwellings and the erection of 12 replacement dwellings in Deeping St James along Eastgate. Just to remind members, the Section 73 is we're just looking at the impact of varying that condition. So in this case, Condition 2, which was the approved plans, looks to substitute a number of house types. We can't revisit any other parts of the development, and the conditions from that existing permission carry over should permission be granted in this case. So the key issues here with looking at the replacement of house types is any additional impact on the character of the area and any additional impacts on residential amenity. So just to remind members of the site, it's located quite some way along Eastgate in Deeping St James, which you can see from the sort of aerial view of the locality there. It's to the southeast of Deeping St James itself. The site was a former horticulture business, and members that were on the committee when this was originally approved may have visited the site and will remember the site comprised, as well as those 2 existing dwellings which were in quite a poor state to the front of the site, there were a number of very derelict greenhouses within the site, and really at the time this was seen as an opportunity to create a significant improvement, as well as providing 12 new market houses. So just looking at the site a bit closer there, this is a Google image. You can see the greenhouses to the rear of the site here, and the existing properties to the frontage. The development has started on that previous permission, and all of this has now been demolished and removed. So the site is largely clear, and some of the development is underway. So this is really this kind of sort of comparison exercise, really. So as opposed to going through every single elevation, I've got these 3D images from the architect, which we can look at as a comparison, really. So this is the approved extant consent, and then this is the proposed layout. What I'm trying to do here is sort of compare the 2 alongside each other. I'm not sure how clearly that appears on your screen, given the size of it. But you can see that the road layout is exactly the same. The house positions are the same. Really, we've just got some sort of quite subtle differences in terms of the layout. This frontage building is sort of quite a bit larger, but still considered to be acceptable in terms of how that looks in the street scene. To this part of the site here, again, you can see the properties are largely orientated the same way, but you've got some differences in the sort of the elevational treatments. On the revised layout here, you've got the garage that's been reorientated, so the external staircase is now between the house and the property. Again, on plot 1, you can see the garage is now integrated and set side on to the house. So whilst it's a larger garage, you've now got the sloped roof away from the neighbouring property there. You've also got some other changes. I think it's plot 7 and 8, which are these 2. These have been the position of these has been swapped around. So just a couple of amendments I wanted to make to the main report. Condition 5, which is the soft landscaping, I just wanted to add a 4th bullet point there, which captures details of any regrading works and final details of land levels. So if I go back to the two layouts here, you have got some level differences between the neighbouring properties, and this is something that's come up in discussion, during the consultation period, and there is some sort of regrading works to be done here to even out those levels. So I just wanted to pick that up on this soft landscaping condition. And then I was, just for the avoidance of doubt, really wanted to add an additional condition which covers plot 10, which again is this one here, and you've got two first floor windows in the side elevation here, and that they do serve bathrooms, but I just wanted to sort of confirm by condition that those windows would be obscure glazed and therefore not result in any additional overlooking of that property. So just a quick evaluation really. The existing consent's in place and has been implemented. This permission really just makes some amendments to the house types and some very minor changes to the position of the houses that have been shown. In the context of the overall scheme though, the design and the scale are very similar to those already approved. The materials have been approved, which all the properties are to be constructed in natural stone, and then there's a mixture of roof types between slate and clay pan tiles. There's no unacceptable further impact on neighbouring properties. We've still got control of the hard and soft landscaping details by condition, which again they would carry through onto any new permission. There's no objections from any of the consultees, and so the recommendations to approve subject to the schedule of conditions in the main report and the amendments which I've verbally reported. Just a note about the section 106 agreement, that this was picked up earlier on. When we do a section 73, the effect that has is to grant a new permission, and so one of the things we have to do is to update the legal agreement to link it to the new permission. In this case, the original section 106 agreement, that the applicants had put forward a viability assessment, which sort of predicated how much money would be coming forward for affordable housing. But within that agreement, there's an overage clause, and so should this permission be granted and effectively a higher value for the overall development, it would be the overall development be achieved through sort of increases in sales values, then the overage clause in the legal agreement takes account of that, and we would see an increase in the affordable housing provision as a cash contribution. Thank you, Chairman and members, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Phil. There are no public speakers either from the applicant or from the public on this one, so we can go straight to questions to the case officer. First one is Councillor Exton. Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Phil's answered the question. It was basically about the what effect on the 106 agreement. Phil's answered that. And Councillor Dilks did indicate that he was quite happy with this in his brief visit this morning. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Baxter. Ashley, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question of admin, really. On the agenda front sheet, on page 3 of your agenda, the location is listed as Spalding Road. How would a member of the public looking at the agenda know that we were going to be talking about Eastgate? And is there any implication to, is there any knock-on effect to this potentially?
Ashley, I don't know what agenda you have or what you have got, but on my papers where it said agenda item 7, it says quite clearly location 153 Eastgate, Deeping St James.
I'm looking at the agenda for Wednesday the 23rd.
So am I.
Agenda item 7.
So am I.
It says Alston Country Homes, Unit 8, Global Centre, 113 Spalding Road.
That's the applicant.
The applicant, Ashley.
No.
Not the that's the
Okay.
applicant address, not the location of the application.
Chair, I'm looking on ModGov, application S201253. Is that correct?
Ashley, I don't know what you're looking at, but on our papers in front of us, it says the location is 153 Eastgate and the applicant lives at 113 Spalding Road.
Well,
I think actually is looking at page 3 on the front piece of the agenda.
Yes.
There is some confusion about whether it's Spalding Road or Eastgate. It does say location 113 Spalding Road.
Yeah. So if you turn to the public agenda.
Yeah, Ashley, you're absolutely right. There is a misprint. There is an error on that, but on the actual front sheet for the proposal, it does get it right at 153 Eastgate.
Yes. So my point is.
Okay. Sorry about that.
My point is that if a member of the public was only looking at the agenda for the meeting, they wouldn't know we were talking about Eastgate.
I mean, I think.
Or Chairman, can I step in? Unless, of course, sorry, Phil wants. Sorry, Phil.
Please do, Martha.
Obviously, the committee report is sort of the final stage of this application process. When officers have gone out for consultation and saw obviously local opinions on this, I'm sure that did correctly reference the correct address. So here there's just been obviously a typo on page 3 of the agenda, but obviously any member of the public that had an interest in hearing about this application would have already been made well aware of the application and its correct address, and probably would have recognised that that was a typo, for want of a better way of putting it, and would have turned to page 93 of the agenda and seen the correct address. So I'm sure that no member of the public is prejudiced by that typo.
I think that's a bold assumption, but I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you, Ashley, but thank you for pointing it out. I certainly hadn't picked it up, which I apologise for.
Chairman, I can just add a bit to what Martha said there as well. I mean,
yes,
obviously that's a admin error on the papers that's been picked up, but Martha's right in that what we do on these Section 73 applications is we consult with anyone who contributed on the original application, as well as neighbouring properties by letter as we would do normally. We also put the site notice up, and then anyone who further contributes through this process, we then write to them informing them of when the agendas or when the item's going to be discussed at committee, and invite them to speak. So I would hope that there has been significant opportunity for anyone interested in the scheme to input and attend and take part at this committee. I know I've corresponded with one individual who was keen to sort of attend the committee, and I think they are doing that. So whilst I think there probably has been an admin mistake, hopefully it hasn't prejudiced anything to do with the application.
Thank you, Phil. Are you content with that, Ashley?
Okay. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it now, and I wouldn't want to delay it because it looks like a relatively I don't want to presume what other people are going to say, but I don't think much damage has been done. But this is the kind of thing that we can trip up on and will cost us dear if we get it wrong.
Yeah, I think the point's taken, point well made and point taken, Ashley. Thank you for that. Are there any members of the committee who wish to ask further questions? Can we now move on to debate if members wish to hold a debate? Right, so there's no indication from anybody that they wish to debate this item, so I'm now... Oh, sorry, Ashley, you wish to contribute in debate now. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate what I think Councillor Dilks probably said before the public meeting opened, the parish council have no objection, as far as I know, to this application. One of the parish council were going to come along but decided not to because kind of nothing to nothing to object to. So I've got no problem.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Could I have a proposer that we approve this subject to the original 106 agreement being reassigned to this application? Please, do I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose it.
That was Councillor Jackie Smith.
Yep.
Who seconded it, please?
I will second it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Harish. I noticed, Penny, you put me in the chat box, Penny. That was after I'd called for the vote.
No, I was going to propose it, but that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Penny. So, Naomi, could you move to the vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor David Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Harish Bisnath-Singh.
For.
Councillor Helen Crawford.
For.
Councillor Ashley Baxter.
For.
Councillor Mike Exton.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Cadbury-Brown. Councillor Cadbury-Brown, I've unmuted your microphone. I'll come back to Councillor Cadbury-Brown. Councillor Milnes.
For.
Councillor Reid.
For.
Councillor Ian Selby.
For.
Councillor Jackie Smith.
For.
Councillor Judy Smith.
For.
Councillor Bob Adams.
For.
And I'll just go back to Councillor Rosemary Cadbury-Brown.
Yes, sorry, 4.
Thank you.
I just couldn't get the mic to unmute.
Thank you. So I can confirm that proposition is carried, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Naomi. That concludes our business. I have no matters of urgency that need to be dealt with today, so it only remains for me to wish you all as good a Christmas as we can possibly have in the current circumstances, and look forward, and a happy new year, hopefully a COVID-free new year eventually. Look forward to seeing you all in the coming year of 2021. And where does time fly to? Please have a safe and happy Christmas as much as you can.
And you too.
Yes, and you all.
Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yes, happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.